So a little bit about us, a quick disclaimer. AP is a registered trademark from the College Board. We're not registered, nor are we endorsed by them, and we're completely unaffiliated. We are independent of them. So that's just a quick note. As for 5 we are a completely volunteer-based nonprofit organization. We got thousands of hours that we've put into this, and what you're seeing is the direct impact of it. So we have quite a few hundred lectures that are coming out throughout the weeks and have in the past weeks. And if you're interested in any of the stuff that you're seeing or you're interested in doing it, please be sure to apply with this document as well. I believe it's bit.ly/5hive-apply. And you're more than welcome to apply. We review all the applications on a rolling basis. Additionally, if any time during this lecture, please, if you have any questions, be sure to ask about them. And also, here's just a quick lecture feedback survey form that I would highly encourage you to fill out. It's a short feedback survey, and it's completely anonymous about what you liked about today's lecture, what you want to see, what you want be done differently. So this ultimately helps shape your exam, what you want to see. Also, in the cram session as well that I'm planning to do on Sunday, to get final review in before the exam, go over some of the key concepts, a lot of things that people a lot of the time often miss. So if you want to see anything there, such as mock questions, FRQs, if you want me to cover anything specific, be sure to also let me know in that document as well. So be sure to have that open as a second tab and fill it out whenever you get the chance to. As for Unit 6, as the last unit, we look at a lot more about market failures and government intervention. 6.1 here is the socially efficient or inefficient market outcomes here. We look at social efficiency, which is another word for allocative efficiency, which just means that you not only are able to meet the demands of your producers, but also your consumers, and therefore resulting in an equilibrium that meets both the demands of both parties here. Your social inefficiency here is a direct result of what a market failure is, which is when it's not able to meet the demands of the free market, which the free market is just going to be the market that consumers are going to be trading and purchasing goods in, assuming perfect competition there as well. You have a lot of types of market failures that you look at in Unit 6 as a whole, and these are just things that impact some third party in a negative way. And first and foremost, your externalities. That's going to be 6.2, which are just going to be third party or spillover costs that impact more than just the producer or the buyer. So I know a lot of your teachers maybe even mention smoking as an example, right? So it's not just the limitation here is that it assumes that the smoker pays for the cost of smoking. However, that's not necessarily true because you have external people that are exposed to a lot of the smoke as a result as well. And then public goods. Firms in the free market have no incentive to produce public goods because public goods are completely free for the public. You're not going to be able to make money for it, and because firms are profit maximizing and they love money, who doesn't? They want to make money somewhere, and public goods is just unfortunately not the place because they simply cannot charge them. And the key problem here, or the market failure in this instance, is the free rider problem, right? So for example, you're able to get something while you buy something, or someone is able to just get it for free, given the name free rider. You would not actually be paying, whereas someone else would be, which is really difficult to enforce payment in the context of public goods within the free rider problem here. Your monopolies ultimately are inefficient because they underproduce and as well as overcharge, which is where they have lower quantity that does not meet the demand, and as well as the price is significantly above competition as a result. That would be covered more so in 6.3 and 4, whereas in 6.5, you look more so in terms of income inequality. I'm sure you've heard of this even outside of your economics class, that income inequality is a pretty big problem. You evaluate that on the sense that resource allocation here, your money is not going to everybody equally. So this thing, a lot of it actually depending on how big income inequality is a problem or how big you see it, it's actually going to be, for the most part, a lot bigger than what you think of it as well. Like, the top 1% usually have around almost half of the world's wealth, and that's just 1 in 100 people, whereas 99% own have whatever's left of that 50%, which just shows the substantial share of how much wealth or how much power how each individual has over society. When it comes down to social efficiency, again, it is just another fancy word for allocative efficiency, meeting the demands of both your producers and consumers. Here you have this is at a maximum because your consumer surplus CS is at a maximum, and as well as your producer surplus down here is also at a maximum, where it cannot be get bigger, and as well as their benefits cannot be further maximized because this is already the maximizing point. Efficiency ultimately evaluates itself as the cost and benefit of both of this, and in Unit 6 actually you don't look at supply and demand too much in that sense, but more so the words have actually changed. Here you see your marginal social cost, which is going to be the cost that incurs on society. So if you're going to take something, buy something, or consume a good, what does that mean on society? What is the cost or the burden that it places on society as a result? So here your would just be your marginal social cost, MSC. That would just be what is perceived by society, and the same goes with marginal social benefit, the benefit that is incurred on society. You're also going to learn a little bit more about marginal private cost as well as the private benefit. The private just refers to the firm as a whole, whereas the social refers to society and everybody as a whole. So that the differentiation between the social and the private is going to be discussed later on, and as well as more so thoroughly within the unit as well. And then again, these values here, depending on how steep the curve goes up or down, that's ultimately, these are values determined by society. So if you value something, that you will value. As for the slides, they will be shared on the 5.5 lecture document, which is the scheduling with all the lectures when they're happening. That's going to go up after the session, so hopefully you're able to find them and use them as a study guide as well. As for it being not socially efficient, it ultimately, just like Unit 2, you have deadweight loss here. Again, this triangle in red is where your marginal social cost and your marginal social benefit, again, is not in equilibrium. And this returns right back to Unit 2.7, where you have disequilibrium when your supply does not meet your demand, and therefore you end up with loss and economic benefit. So this would ultimately be the impact of whether price floors, price ceilings, these are things that make things much more so inefficient here. So for example, by capping the quantity out here with a quota, you ultimately end up with a market inefficiency here, where you lose out on all of this, and you end up with a lot less quantity as a direct result of this. Here, as a result of this, the government will create legislation. For example, if your MSC is here, but your marginal private cost is like down here, this would ultimately mean that it's in disequilibrium as the problem. Whereas to fix that problem, you would ultimately need to move your marginal social cost to equal your marginal private cost. And one of the ways that a government can do this or achieve so is to tax the difference, where it ultimately shifts the curve. So any shifter of the curve, for instance, could theoretically shift your curve from down here all the way to up here. And again, when you do graph it, it's really important you draw the areas to show which one's the original one and which one is shifted to and towards which direction as a direct result. As for your interpretation of deadweight loss, could you elaborate on that a little more? As for your if you meant intercept point as in like this one, I believe that's what you meant. And then your limit is up here, I believe that's what you mean. But I'm not too entirely sure of what you mean by your by the interpretation. So if you could just clarify. The cap line? Wait. Okay. Oh, the first line. Oh, this one. Okay, yeah. That's one way to interpret, and that is a good way to interpret deadweight loss. That because it is inefficient here because you have a lot more demand than you have supply. Therefore, you have like loss economic benefit here as well. Now, moving on with externalities. Externalities are as very straightforward in terms of the word, but ultimately, like I see a lot of students really get confused between the types of different externality, and I will admit there are quite a few, and it does get overwhelming at times. So, but when it comes down to externalities, these are just like external, or the root word within there is external, meaning outside. So these are just third parties that are getting impacted. So spillover costs that are impacting your third party users as a direct result. Again, here for example, pollution is going to be a really big example of a spillover cost. So as a factory that you're producing a lot of goods, the assumption is that you're making money by selling all of these goods. The consumers pay for your good, you give them that good. However, one of the key assumptions is that it's not looking at the impact on or the burden on society, the pollution that is generated as a direct result of producing all of these outputs from the factory. A lot of the times, I don't know if you've heard of it, but a lot of the times, fast fashion even, or just fashion in general, is a very environmentally burdening industry where it is responsible for a lot of carbon emissions and pollution as a whole. So it just burdens society because the pollution ultimately does not impact one person, but ultimately does so impact everybody, or impacting people who breathe air, which is pretty much just everyone as a result. Your free market here again, like one of the key limitations of this is it only assumes the producer and buyer, which Unit 6 comes right back to address such as a direct result. And again, your externalities are not always necessarily bad. So it can be positive. So for example, what's a good example of a positive externality? Let me find one off the top of my head. Yeah, okay, so yeah, absolutely. Vaccines can definitely be one. So like if you take the vaccine, or the people around you take the vaccine, like ultimately you are able to gain immunity, and you're able to utilize the vaccine, like a lot collective immunity as a whole. So the people around you are immune, therefore you're probably going to be in a lot safer of a position when it comes down to a medical perspective. Renewable energy, renewable energy for sure, it definitely could be one. Especially here's the thing with externalities. Almost anything you can think of, pretty much one way or another, you could stretch it out towards it being an externality, and whether that be a positive or negative one is the next question. As for renewable energy, was there anything that you were looking at elaborating on as to what that externality may have potentially been? Because what I was thinking for renewable energy is that it's supposed to be a renewable source, so therefore you're reducing pollution, which ultimately pollution is the externality, and reducing that externality is one thing. Like you may be on my line, or you may be thinking of something a little bit more a little bit differently in terms of renewable energy. So if you want to elaborate on that, feel free to do so. As for externalities, you have four types of externalities, which can be broken down into two and then another two. So your first group of two is going to be a consumption externality here. Your consumption externality affects people who consume your goods. So as a result of your consumption externalities, you also have positive and negative consumption externalities. So your positive externality from consumption is going to be where you're going to have a lot less. So this would be your private cost, and then this would be your social benefit. Your social benefit, and then this would be your private benefit. This would be your social benefit, because it is positive because there is not enough of it and you want more of it. Therefore, your marginal social benefit is going to be out here. Whereas for a negative one, there's going to be too much of it, and here you're going to have marginal social cost out here and your marginal social benefit of it here. Therefore, you want less of it in order to make it equal. And this goes very similar with production externality. However, you're now moving forward with your supply curve, which is now also equal to your marginal social cost curve. I can narrow down the supply and demand curves to narrow down externalities. Could you elaborate on what you mean by narrowing externalities? Yes, absolutely. You can look at two supply curves would be your production, and then two demand curves would be your consumption. However, you would need direct labels as to which one is the marginal social and marginal private in order to figure out which one is what as the direct result of that. And yes, absolutely. Hopefully that does clarify. So if I got to your point, hopefully I did. Again, a quick reminder, another reminder to externalities. They are inefficient because of allocative inefficiency. This just means that they produce way too much or produce way too little. And here your positive externality is too little. And you can think of it as, because it's positive, you want more and more of it. So you just want to see it, you just want more of it, and therefore you want it to produce more. Whereas in consumption, your private cost is going to be greater than your social cost, and this would just mean that that you want more, to meet social, and this also goes down to production, or I spelt it wrong. You want your marginal private benefit to your marginal private benefit is going to be a lot less than your social benefit, and you want to change it out so it has more. This also goes very similar to your negative externalities, because you're producing way too much, and you want your marginal private cost is going to be substantially greater than your marginal social cost, and you want less of it so that you because it's bad. Now, using a very common example of smoking, we can assume that here smoking generates a negative externality because of third-party health effects, such as exposure to smoking as a result. We can also draw the consumption externality graph here with this with three lines. Here your MSE, which either one could be your marginal private cost or your marginal social cost. Now, how would we determine that one demand which one of these demand curves would be the marginal social benefit, and as well as the marginal product benefit based on these curves and with this assumption of smoking? So feel free to type in that chat as well. Yes, absolutely. So smoking is negative, therefore your private benefit is going to be a lot greater. It's going to be greater than your social benefit as a result, because it is bad and you want less of it. Now, with this example, we can determine that your marginal social benefit is going to be a lot less than your marginal private benefit. Now, when it comes down to drawing this, we see that it's going to be substantially lower here, and therefore the quantity that society wants is going to be a lot less as a direct result of that as well. Your socially optimal price, again, is going to be lower. You want less smoking as a result. Honestly, I don't know why the price is substantially lower, because I saw like two examples of the smoking one. One did it as a production one, which made a lot more sense, that the cost is going to be higher and as well as your quantity lower. However, this one is going to be correct because the other one focuses on production, which is not necessarily the case. Now, because these two are separate lines and therefore are not equal, we want to interpret the societal benefit as the value that we adopt, or that the firm should adopt. So, like, how would we be able to make this private benefit equal to the marginal societal cost? So, like, here you want this you want to intersect at this. You want this curve to to shift over down to this way and intersect here. So what this just means is that you want to find a shifter of your demand curve. So again, think unit 2, where you want to move it over a little bit and therefore lower the price. So for example, a tax or subsidy. Yes, absolutely. Tax is definitely going to be the way to go, or one of the ways to go, in order to lower, where you reduce quantity to help mitigate that as well. Actually, that's a funny slide, but I'll move down there later. Yes, absolutely. Yes, it would definitely be a tax on consumers, but also you do want to consider the producers as well. As for unit 2, depending on how steep both the supply and demand curves are going to be. So for example, if your supply curve is going to be really steep, that's going to affect your producers, whereas if your supply curve is not steep, it's going to affect more so your consumers. Yeah, hopefully I just clarified with the magnitude of the tax. Again, I'll just draw it out here on this space. So this would be your supply. Or if your demand curve is very steep like this, you think of this as like the price as a result of your tax. If your demand curve is going to be this would be your tax revenue, where if you're and then this would be where you split it. So for example, if your demand curve is very steep, although this could be a little bit more steeper to show, your consumers are going to be paying for it, whereas if your curve is not so steep like this, whereas you tax it up here, your producers are going to be paying the brunt of the burden of the tax, which would result in this area being taxed as well. So hopefully that does clarify with the magnitude of the tax as to who pays for how much of the tax when a tax is imposed on a free market. Now, moving along with 6.3, we enter with public and private goods. This is just a very interesting image that I found from my teacher's slideshow. I love this image because it's a really great business idea, and we do wonder why nobody has started such a brilliant business idea. And supposing that you are a really brilliant entrepreneur with a very bold idea, you want to set up a stand to sell sunlight at a fixed price. You believe that this is going to be a profitable business idea because sunshine is a desirable good. And it's also scarce, by the way. Since that you are going to be the only seller in this market, you're going to be in monopoly, and you're going to be the price maker, and you're going to sell so much money, you're going to make so much profit, right? Like, that's going to be a very questionable business model. So, and there are a lot of things. So if you want to point out a few things wrong with this business model, please go right ahead in this chat, because there are quite a few things wrong with it. Yes, absolutely. Sunshine is limited. It is a scarce resource because for a lot of places in the world, even where I live, we don't get sunshine that often. Like a lot of the times, it's rain, it's snow. Like you don't get sunshine 24/7. So, like for example, at night, your sunshine is going to go down. Like you have a limited amount. I mean, theoretically, when you get if you expand your PPC curve well down into the future, 10 is way too soon. It Air is not a scarce resource. It's everywhere. But quality air is probably going to be a lot scarcer, but air is not scarce. Returning with the argument of selling the sunset or sunlight for money, it is actually a non-rival and non-excludable good. So the problem with selling a good like that is that you just cannot enforce or enforce people, because if you're gonna charge them to take a look just to see the beautiful sunset, they can just go somewhere else, watch it for free. Meaning, which ultimately includes the non-excludable part of the good, and more so the argument here is that you cannot exclude people as a result of this. When it comes down to the non-rival part, anyone can just come out and see the sunset. It's not limited to, let's say, the first 10 people or the 100 people who can pay the most money to see the sunset, right? The sunset is a lovely thing rather than a privilege, right? And when it comes down to this, it has a lot of this business idea has a lot of flaws to it. I wonder why you can't start it, right? Like it has a lot of arguments as well. You could be the monopoly and a price maker. However, you should probably shut down because you would be well below the average variable cost. Yes, so when it comes down to public and private goods, your excludability and your rivalry are going to be factors. Like your rivalry factor here, if one person consumes it, can another still consume it? So for example, if you're watching YouTube videos, it's not limited to only one person can watch it, or as a result. One thing to note for rivalry is that your consumption is either going to or is not going to affect another. Whereas if it is going to be rivalrous, for example, a library book would be example. If you borrow it, someone else cannot borrow that book until you return that book. Therefore, your consumption directly affects their consumption. Whereas if it's non-rival, you and your friend can consume it as well at the same time with no impact. Whereas as for excludability, can you filter people, say, hey, you just cannot breathe the air, you simply cannot breathe it, I'm just gonna exclude you? That's simply not possible. Whereas if you're going to a fairground ticket or to your local county or city fair, that is excludable because the city can charge you tickets for gate admission. You have to pay money just to get in. That would be excludable. Now, by placing all of these into some kind of matrix table, we can see that rival and excludable goods lead to private goods, where people are able to control who gets what, and as well as the consumption is impactful directly as a result. So, for example, food, clothing, these are all examples. So, if I eat food, my consumption is going to directly affect yours, meaning you would not be able to get it, whereas common goods are non-excludable but are rivalry. For example, fish stock. So if you overfish, then that would impact the total availability of fish. Where it comes down to excludable and non-rivalry, those would be club goods. So for example, cinema, satellite TV, internet cable, those would all be examples. And excludable and non-rival, those would just be your public goods, like I mentioned. The beautiful sunset that you so desperately try to charge people. Ultimately, that's going to be a failed business model, right in the garbage. And as well as air, national defense. You cannot, for instance, air, you cannot say this person can breathe, this person has to pay, this person does not have the ability to breathe because the air is reserved for this person, right? Like, these are all very questionable sayings to be at the very least. Yes, absolutely. Fish in a public pond is non-excludable because because anyone can come in and fish it. However, the key limitation here is that we're not assuming the idea of government legislation or municipal laws saying you cannot fish here, right? This just means that anyone can come in and fish it, and if I take the fish or take all of it, therefore you cannot come in and do the same. Where as for a premium music subscription, it is excludable. The price is the exclusion factor, whereas it is non-rivalry, meaning if I want to buy that subscription, that, like, for example, Spotify, if I just bought Spotify Premium, that would not affect your ability to purchase Spotify Premium. So your non-rival goods, and the best examples are going to be things that have infinite copies of them. For example, YouTube subscriptions. Those are going to be those are going to have endless supplies. You can keep buying and buying more as a result. Hopefully, that does clarify with the types of goods. But moving along with 6.4, your effects of government intervention within different market structures. Now, the government will want to intervene with a lot of these as a result, because the purpose of government intervention is to improve allocative efficiency. Because, again, remember the idea that it is a market failure and that the market is inefficient and unable, or its incompetence to meet the demands of the market at large. Now, the purpose of government intervention here is to really reduce and eliminate any deadweight loss that they can find within this market, and there are a few ways that they do so as well. First and foremost being, as I've mentioned before, price floors and price ceilings. Those are going to be price controls that can help you reduce deadweight and eliminate deadweight loss by reallocating production to become more and more so efficient. So what this means, for example, is if it's being operated at a price that is above or below the marginal social benefit, the private cost being more or less being different, a price ceiling can set the price towards where it is equal. Therefore, producers will have to sell there, and therefore force itself into it. However, that also means there would still be deadweight loss as a result. Now, antitrust laws would assuming that you know what monopolies are, we see that monopolies like to collude, come together, and have price leadership. So that would kind of be the idea of two or three firms coming together and saying, "Hey, let's charge them all $10 across the board. Whether you buy at firm A or firm B, you still have to pay $10." And again, collusion is illegal, and it is very not good for consumers, because it ultimately ends up with all of us getting screwed over with very high prices. And actually, Canada, I don't know how many of you guys are from Canada or live in Canada like I do. We have quite a few monopolies. Our entire grocery system are going to be in monopolies, and as well as telecommunication providers here. We have quite a few main or large ones that charge ridiculously high prices, and I believe we actually have some of the second or the third highest internet fees, and it is really expensive, to say the least. Whereas I've seen in Europe, you can get them dirt cheaps for pennies even. Here, I think a lot of the plans are like $50-$60. I honestly have lost track as to how bad things have gotten here. Especially this also comes down to mergers as well. When it comes down to this as like merging together to make an even bigger firm, I think they really just want to have a monopoly over the entire market, which is why we have ridiculously high prices as well. Yes, this would also technically go under game theory, where companies see other prices as well. Your payoff matrix would see the decision of one, and then as a result of their decision, what is your best move? And you would make that move as a result, and therefore have an outcome where you would do this and they would do that, where whether that be the best or the worst decision, whether they collude or not collude. As for your antitrust laws, that would just promote market competition by trying to set it out at a price where it is allocatively efficient, or, for example, reducing barriers to entry so that it more competition lowers prices. Similarly, taxes and subsidies, again, shifting the both of those curves up or down, those can alternate the private cost and benefit so that it equals the socially optimal point, where it is able to have MSC is equal to MSB, where your marginal private cost also equals MSB, or marginal social benefit, there as a direct result. Now, for a natural monopoly, we can return here to see that a price ceiling at that the government can impose at two different places to regulate this monopoly here. Here, the area here in red would just be your deadweight loss, or the market inefficiency, the lost economic benefit here. You would ultimately have a direct loss here as a result. The point of your price, or sorry, you having intervene here with a price ceiling here, is to reduce that deadweight loss, not necessarily to eliminate it, but also to but could also be reducing it as well. Because sometimes you simply cannot realistically get rid of all the deadweight loss in the market here as a result. You can first of all establish it at a fair returns rate, where it is at this point here in red that I'm highlighting. Hopefully you're able to see this point. This would be your fair returns rate, where you're able to regulate that monopoly, lower the price, increase production, but also allow this company to still make some sort of profit or as a result. Here you would reduce your deadweight loss. If anyone wants to point out where that new deadweight loss is, I'll come back to this as a result. I'll come back to the new deadweight loss if they were to impose a price ceiling at this point. My lines are not very good today. As for your socially optimal point, where your DARP curve is going to equal your marginal cost, this would be your allocatively efficient point. Again, socially optimal is just another word for allocative efficiency. Here you have no deadweight loss, but here you will require a subsidy in order for this firm to remain in operation. That's a great question. As for the socially optimal point, there would be no deadweight loss theoretically here, because you are meeting the economic surplus of both your producers and your consumers. However, if you charge them at a fair return rate up here, you would still have a deadweight loss at this point, which would just be this area in red. I'll just highlight it a little bit better. It would be substantially less. Your triangle would just be this area for deadweight loss. And hopefully I did clarify, and yes, Sune, it is only when it is socially optimal, and there's no deadweight loss when it is socially optimal, meaning your price ceiling is at the marginal cost curve. Whereas if you were to charge it at the fair returns rate up at ATC, there would be deadweight loss. However, that loss would be substantially less. Hopefully that does clarify for that question. But yeah, no worries. Also, again, if you haven't already filled out this feedback survey, or in the process of filling it out, please be sure to fill it out. Your feedback is invaluable in helping me prepare for your exam, helping you do the best you possibly can. Whether that's more practice questions, more multiple choice, those are ultimately all things that can help improve the session, make things better suit your needs, which will ultimately help make help shape the vision of the lectures that you see, whether that's for this year or also next AP season as well. This is going to be the last bit of Unit 5, which we will look at inequality. Income inequality is, again, going to be market failure because of uneven wealth distribution of income. Now, this returns back to the fact that I said a little bit earlier, where the top 1% of individuals control about 40-45% of the global income, or the total wealth in the world. And this just highlights the stark contrast between how much money that one person has or how much money that more people do has as a direct result. This is just the saying that the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer, which just exacerbates the idea of income inequality. Here we can measure income inequality with the Lorenz curve, which is going to be one of the last curves for this course. Although there is still another one that I will show you a little bit later down. Your Lorenz curve here is aimed to use here. There are going to be two lines. Your first line is going to be this line. This is going to be the optimal distribution of income, which is going to be assuming that everybody has an equal amount of money. So here, with the line here, for example, 20% of the people have 20% of the wealth, 40 and 40, and so on and so forth, resulting in a straight linear line. However, the bottom line here, this curve is going to be usually below the line of equality, where you have 20 people owning about less wealth, 40% owning 20, and so on and so forth. And the further sagging below or curving downwards this way just shows income inequality as a whole. So this would just be a line that really exacerbates income inequality, where the rich really have a lot of money because there is a stark jump between 80 and 100. And then the idea here, you're drawing your Lorenz curve. You're not going to have to draw it on the exam. However, you should still understand the concept and as well as how to evaluate the line. Calculating your Gini coefficient. Your Gini coefficient is going to be your number to highlight the degree of income inequality, which is going to be a number between 0 and 1. Although you don't need to calculate the number or draw this curve out on the exam, this is just going to be your exclusion note for today, as for what you do and do not need to know on the exam. So please don't focus on studying how to draw the curve or how to calculate the coefficient, because there are going to be better things that you need to focus on for the exam. And this is just not one of the things that will be there on the exam. Now, again, tax is going to be the way, like, it really loves to use tax as a way to fix all of your problems. Whether it's tax this, tax that, tax here, tax there, it's really going to, the idea, it seems to be focused on taxation being the solution to fixing society, fixing problems. And whether we like it or not to pay tax, your taxation systems are also ways to address this curve and ultimately collect revenue to address the issue as a whole. When it comes down to progressive tax system, I think this is the system that most countries in the world use. The United States, Canada, a lot of Europe actually uses progressive tax rating system, where everybody, as you make more money, you pay more money. And this would kind of be the idea of tax bracket. So for example, the first $10,000 you make, that's going to be a 10% tax rate, whereas the next $20,000 are going to be subjected to a 15% tax rate, and the next $20,000 are going to be subjected to a greater tax rate. So the idea that as you make more money, you pay more tax. Whereas in contrast to a progressive tax system, as you make more money, you pay less. Now you may be wondering, what does the system look like? So for example, a regressive tax would just be the idea of a the idea of paying like sales tax, for example. When you and the reason why sales taxes are going to be regressive is because they take up a lot more of more money from a low income earner's perspective than it is for a high income earner or someone who is well off. And the reason why is that even though it's for example, 5, 6, 7% sales tax across the board, you pay more, and you want to buy the same amount of goods. However, the sales tax you pay is going to be a smaller share of income that you make if you make a lot more money out of your total income and your total tax that you pay. Whereas if you made a lot less money, that tax is going to eat up a lot more of your budget, and as well as the taxes that you end up having to pay. Yes, fixed taxes are also going to be a type of regressive tax where, for example, you give a good example. Everybody pays $100. That $100 is going to impact someone who makes low income more than someone who makes billions, right? Because $100 is not going to impact you, whereas if you made a lot less money, $100 is going to go a lot less of a way, and $100 is going to be more important to you. Whereas, for example, I'll get to the example of a proportional tax, which would just be everybody paying the same rate. Everybody pays 20%. No matter you make $2,000 or $2 million, everybody still pays the same proportional amount of income. Yeah, absolutely. Proportional would be that. I know not many countries do it, but I believe it's Singapore that does a flat tax rate of 20%, or was it Hong Kong? I don't remember. And then again, progressive income taxes are going to be the most effective way, because that is what most countries use for taxing the rich to redistribute that money to the poor. And what they do to redistribute to the poor is to take that money from the rich via taxes and then reinvesting in the poor. For example, useless carbon tax rebates that we have to pay that we get in Canada, which are like a drop in the bucket, or even just going back into it. Like, for example, education, childcare, welfare, these are all ways that they go right back to the lower class. And again, this is just an image, a reminder to pay your taxes. Taxes are not voluntary. You should pay taxes. Fortunately, there's no such thing as a free ride. Unit 6 is everyone's downfall. Unit 6 is I find Unit 5 a little bit more difficult than Unit 6. I don't know how to put it into words. And yes, absolutely, I agree with you, Sune, that Unit 5 is the downfall. Unit 3 and 4, those units, they look a lot more overwhelming, but when you start drawing the graphs out, it's actually not that bad. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you on Unit 2, 3, and 4 being easier. They just have a lot more content in it, and being able to understand that content as soon as you get it, it's as easy as a click. As for the weighting of on the AP exam, you're going to have Unit 3 and 4, also 2 as well, that are going to count at around 20-25% of the exam. So those 3 units are pretty close to 70-75% of the exam. So those are going to be the focus points of unit studying as well. But that doesn't mean you forget Unit 1, 5, and 6, right? Those are still going to be counted on the exam one way or not. And when it comes down to the graphs aren't too difficult. Really, the easiest way to go at things is to just draw the graphs out. Because if you don't know what's happening, the easiest way to really understand something is just draw the situation out, and probably if it sounds like the situation sounds like it. If it sounds right, it probably is right for most of the time. And yeah, most of the graph questions aren't too bad. Usually it's the explaining part. Yeah, I could probably try running through the 2018 FRQ. Could you send it to me? I can can you send the link to it? I can go through it after the end, a little bit later on. I'll go through it after the end of the session after this unit as well. So just hold it, and if I do forget it, if I forget, remind me. And this would be your last curve, your Laffer curve, which would be the graph that shows the relationship between your tax rate and your tax revenue. So as you increase your tax rate, you're going to lose tax revenue. And why would this be the case? It is parabolic because as your tax rate increases, there's going to be a lesser incentive to work. So if you're taxing people 80-90% of their income, they may as well just rely on government assistance, because the money that they're making isn't coming back to them, and they're not able to use their money in independent ways. And really, they have to determine what is the best rate to tax, because if you tax too much, your citizens are going to get really pissed off about how much they have to pay. And then this ultimately just wraps up the vast majority of Unit 6. If you haven't already, again, I think I've said this a couple times, be sure to fill out the feedback survey. If you haven't already, please be sure to fill it out so your feedback is being used. Again, your feedback is greatly appreciated. It's 100% anonymous, so be sure to fill it out if you haven't already. That's like pretty much all of today's lecture. I'll just quickly go through your FRQ really quickly. So just hold up. I'll stop the recording.